I'm Jordan and I'm 28 years old. And let me tell you something. The moment my sister's boyfriend whispered that I shouldn't have come to their anniversary celebration because broke people lowered the aesthetic, he had no idea he'd just insulted the owner of the very venue where he and his entire family worked. He also didn't know that his employment would be terminated before their wedding even happened. I need to know, where in the world are you watching from? And has anyone ever made you feel small in a room you actually built? Drop your story in the comments. My pulse didn't even spike. I just looked at Derek's perfect, professionally styled hair, then down at my own simple cotton dress and sandals. He smirked, turning his back on me to signal security guards who I had personally hired 4 years ago. He thought he was dismissing a broke relative. He didn't realize he was dismissing the CEO. I offered no argument. I didn't beg for entry. I simply pivoted and walked away, not toward the exit, but toward the service corridor hidden behind the bar. The bass from the celebration vibrated through the walls, shaking the wine glasses on the trays servers were carrying out to guests, who were currently drinking my wine on my budget. As I walked down the silent, carpeted hallway of the executive wing, the noise of the party faded into a dull hum. It was funny, really. They thought I was invisible because I wanted to be. They didn't understand the difference between being ignored and being strategic. I was the glass child. That's what psychologists call it, the sibling who is looked through, never at. Growing up, my twin sister Madison was the daughter my parents orbited. She was loud, demanding, and brilliant in that flashy way that gets attention. I was just there. I learned early on that if I wanted anything, I had to get it myself, quietly, without disturbing the orbit. I built this entire empire in the shadows because no one was watching me anyway. Silence wasn't a weakness, it was my weapon. I reached the end of the hall and swiped my keycard. The lock beeped green, a cheerful little sound that felt like a gavel coming down. I stepped into my office. It was cool, quiet, and smelled of mahogany and expensive espresso. On the wall hung a plaque, Cascade Event Venues, valuation $14 million. I sat down at the desk, the leather chair creaking softly. My computer screen glowed to life. I didn't open my email. I opened the payroll system. I typed in Derek. There he was, event coordinator, hired 8 months ago. I pulled up his file. Navigating the database felt less like administration and more like tracing the roots of a parasitic weed. Rachel, my mother, operations manager, Madison, my sister, hospitality supervisor. They were all there. My family. My employees. I didn't fire him yet. That would be emotional. That would be reactive. And I don't do reactive. I flagged his account for an immediate financial audit. Then I leaned back and watched the cursor blink. It looked like a heartbeat, a very slow, very cold heartbeat. I closed my eyes and let the memory wash over me. 6 years ago. The attorney's office smelled like leather and old books. My grandmother's will. My parents sat on one side of the table, holding hands with Madison. They were vibrating with anticipation. To my granddaughter, Madison, the attorney had read, I leave the college trust fund, totaling $90,000. My parents had gasped. Madison had squealed. They talked about business school, about trips abroad, about the future. And to my granddaughter Jordan, the attorney continued, peering over his glasses, I leave the property on Riverside Bluff. My mother had actually laughed. It was a nervous sound, but it cut. Riverside Bluff was a joke. It was 6 acres of overgrown, flood-prone riverbank with a dilapidated barn that had been condemned by the city 3 times. The assessment value was $18,000, less than the cost of a used Civic. You can probably flip it for cash, my dad had said later, patting me on the shoulder. Don't stress, Jordan. You're resourceful. You'll make it work. Make it work. That was the family motto for me. Madison got the funding. I got the mandate to make it work. So I did. I didn't flip it. I moved into a storage container on the property. I spent that first winter freezing in a sleeping bag, watching YouTube videos on how to repair foundations and install electrical systems. I ate instant noodles made with water heated on a hot plate. I learned that when you have nothing, you have to be everything. I became a contractor, a designer, a landscaper. I turned that dilapidated barn into the first event space. I rented it out to corporate teams from downtown who wanted rustic charm without actual discomfort. It booked solid in 8 months in the first month. I used that revenue to build 2 more venues, then a banquet hall. Then I bought the adjacent land. I learned the concept of the iceberg illusion. People only see the tip, the success, the money, the finished product. They don't see the massive, jagged mountain of ice beneath the surface, the frozen nights, the bleeding knuckles, the isolation. I realized then that if I told my family, they wouldn't see the work, they would only see the money. They would think they were entitled to it because we were family. So I kept it quiet. Loud money buys things, quiet money buys freedom. I created a holding company. I hired a management firm. When my parents needed jobs, I told the firm to hire them. They thought they were working for a nameless, faceless corporation. They never knew the signature on their paychecks was mine. The sound of my phone buzzing against the mahogany desk snapped me back to the present. It sounded like an angry insect trapped in a jar. I picked it up. A text from Madison. "Where did you disappear to? Derek says you left in a huff. You're killing the mood, Jordan, seriously." Then another. "Mom is upset. She says you look like you shop at thrift stores. Why can't you just dress appropriately for once? You're embarrassing us." And another from Derek. "I don't know why you even showed up if you were just going to be awkward. Stay away from the wedding in 2 months. We don't need this toxic energy." Then a voice note from my mother. I pressed play. Her voice was shrill, tight with that specific kind of anxiety she only got when appearances were threatened. "Jordan, I don't know what is wrong with you. You have always been difficult. You have always been envious of Madison and Derek. Just because you haven't achieved anything doesn't mean you have to sabotage them. You need to apologize immediately." I didn't reply. I didn't block them. I let the notifications stack on the lock screen like a cairn of stones, each one a piece of evidence. I needed them to dig the hole deeper. I needed them to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that their cruelty wasn't a mistake, it was a character trait. I looked at the security monitors on my wall. I could see the celebration in the crystal ballroom. I saw Derek laughing, holding a glass of wine. I saw my mother holding court, looking proud. I saw Madison embracing her friends. They looked so happy, so secure. They thought they were standing on solid ground. They had no idea they were standing on a trap door, and I was holding the lever.
A sharp knock on the door. "Come in," I said. Elena, my operations director, walked in. She looked pale. She was holding a file folder like it was a loaded weapon. "Miss Carter," she said. She never called me Jordan in the office. "You asked for the audit on the anniversary celebration booking." I did. She slid the folder across the desk. It's not good." I opened it. I expected to see a family discount, maybe a payment arrangement. What I saw made the air leave the room. The invoice for the celebration totaled $68,000. Venue rental, premium catering, open bar, live DJ, custom lighting design. And under the payment method section, it didn't list Madison's credit card. It didn't list Derek's account. It listed Cascade Event Venue's corporate card, marketing department. Under purpose of expense, Derek had written Strategic Brand Partnership Gala, Influencer Engagement Initiative. I stared at the words Strategic Brand Partnership Gala. "He embezzled it," I said. My voice was flat. "He charged his own anniversary party to the company." "He listed it as a promotional event," Elena said, her voice shaking slightly. "He invited 7 influencers, his friends with a few thousand followers, to justify the cost. But the rest of the guest list is just his family, your family." I felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. This wasn't just petty boyfriend arrogance. This wasn't just a future brother-in-law being condescending. This was a felony. I thought about the curator's fallacy. We live in a world where people are obsessed with curating a perfect life online. Derek needed this celebration to look perfect. He needed the photos to be flawless. He needed the world to think he was wealthy, successful, and elite. But the gap between his online perfection and his chaotic reality was so wide he had to steal to bridge it. He wasn't just afraid of broke people lowering the aesthetic. He was afraid of being exposed as a fraud. He was projecting his own insecurity onto me. "Call legal," I said, closing the folder, "and call the authorities, but tell them to wait." "Wait?" Elena asked. "Yes," I said. "I want them here Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. sharp. Tuesday morning." The sky was a bruised purple over the river. I stood by the window of the boardroom, watching the cars pull into the staff lot. I had issued the summons on Monday night. An automated email from the executive board sent to Derek, Madison, and Rachel. Mandatory meeting regarding marketing expense discrepancies, 9 a.m. My phone had buzzed all night. Madison texting me, "Jordan, can I borrow $600? I think I'm getting fired. Something corporate about the party." My mom texting, "I don't know what's happening at work. They want to see me. I'm terrified. Why are you ignoring us?" They walked into the boardroom at 8:59. Derek looked nauseous. He was wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than my first car. Madison looked anxious. My mother looked terrified, clutching her bag to her chest. They sat down at the long mahogany table. They didn't look at each other. They looked at the empty chair at the head of the table. "I can explain," Derek whispered to Elena, who was standing by the door. "It was a promotional event. We got excellent exposure. The photos were stunning." "The executive board is here," Elena said. She opened the door. I walked in. I wasn't wearing a cotton dress. I was wearing a tailored navy suit. My hair was pulled back. I didn't look like the sister. I looked like the CEO. The silence in the room was absolute. It was a physical thing, heavy and suffocating. Derek let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh. "Jordan, what are you doing here? Did you get a job in maintenance or something? Can you get us some water? We're waiting for the executives." I bypassed the pleasantries and took the chair at the head of the table, the heavy oak scraping against the floor, a sound that silenced the room instantly. "I don't work here, Derek," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it echoed off the glass walls. "I am here." I slid the audit file across the polished wood. It stopped right in front of him. "This company," I said, pointing to the logo on the wall, "is mine. The land, the venues, the payroll, it's all mine." My mother made a sound like she had been punched in the gut. Madison's mouth fell open. You own Cascade?" she stammered. "Since the beginning," I said. "Since I lived in a storage container and fixed the plumbing with my own hands while you were partying at university." I looked at Derek. He was trembling. "You told me broke people lower the aesthetic," I said. "But you know what really lowers an aesthetic, Derek? An arrest record." "Jordan, please," he squeaked. "It was a misunderstanding. We are family." "No," I said. "We were family when you insulted me. Now you're just an employee who embezzled $68,000 from my company." I nodded to Elena. She opened the door again. 2 police officers stepped in. The screaming was the worst part. Not from Derek. He went silent as soon as the cuffs clicked. It was my mother. She screamed that I was ungrateful, that I was heartless, that I couldn't do this to my own sister's boyfriend. I just watched. I felt like I was watching a movie I'd seen 100 times. I knew the ending. Security escorted my mother and Madison out. They were terminated for cause, gross negligence, and conflict of interest. They wouldn't be getting severance. When the room was finally empty, silence rushed back in. It wasn't lonely. It was heavy, rich, and peaceful. I walked out to the terrace of the venue. The air was crisp. Below me, I could see the police cruiser pulling away, lights flashing silently against the trees. I saw my parents' car following it. erratic and desperate. I thought about the piece of subtraction. We are taught that addition is always better. More friends, more family, more money. But sometimes the greatest act of self-care is subtraction. Removing the rot so the healthy tissue can breathe. Removing the noise so you can hear yourself think. I took my phone out of my pocket. I opened the family group chat. I didn't type a goodbye. I didn't type an explanation. I just hit delete conversation and block. The sun was beginning to set over the river. It turned the water into a sheet of hammered gold. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of pine and ownership. I had built this view. I had paid for this piece. And now, finally, I could enjoy it. If you've ever had to build your own table because they wouldn't give you a seat at theirs, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to know that their success is the best revenge.